Well, thanks for joining us at TLA Sports. We're happy to have Lamar Hurd, the color commentator for the Portland Trail Blazers, joining us today. Former basketball player at the Oregon State University. Almost automatically said University of Oregon, so let's get this started. Actually, I want to start there with you coming over from Houston, playing at Oregon State. How was your transition into Oregon, and what's kind of drawn you back time and again?
My transition was pretty good and pretty seamless, I think, because I had transitioned before I got to college. So I grew up in the southwest part of Houston and went to school down there, but then transitioned to attend a school northeast of the city once I got into the sixth grade. And so it was completely different demographics. It was a different level of school. Like the population was much smaller in this place that I moved to. So I had experienced somewhat of a significant change early on in my life. So then the change to go from Houston area to go to Corvallis, Oregon, although that it was different, I had already been through that type of process. And those kind of changes and transitions are very dependent on, number one, yourself and your own adaptability and just who you are and what your preferences are. And then number two, the group of people that you're going to go join. So in both situations for me, when I transitioned from one place to the next, I was joining a really good group of people that I liked being around, that made me feel like I was still at home. So no matter where the location was, I always felt pretty comfortable.
Very good, very good. And you played for OSU, graduated, went and played abroad in Germany, I believe, before coming back to the Portland area, where, if I understand correctly, you've been ever since. Coaching, now broadcasting with the Blazers. What have you enjoyed the most? Does one call your heart more, playing, coaching, or calling the game, or is it all kind of enjoyable?
I enjoy all of those things. And for me, it wasn't so much about coaching as it was being able to impact children. Coaching just happened to be the avenue by which I did that. That was the avenue that I knew. It's kind of a natural transition for a lot of guys who played, and girls who played a certain sport, to then go back and give back to that sport by coaching. For me, I got into coaching in 2007 after my season in Germany, unexpectedly. And I was at a gym just planning a workout at that gym and, just kind of get a free membership. And so I made a deal with the guy who ran the gym that I would coach a group of kids and train them if he gave me free entrance into the gym. So it was a deal we both made, and I didn't expect that I'd be doing that long term when I made that deal, but I had my first group of kids to coach. It was a team that consisted of third, fourth, and fifth graders. And when they had their first day of practice, that's the day that I retired from basketball. And I was 23 and having pretty good success at that time. And I had contract offers to try to get into the D League, which is now the G League, and then offers abroad still. But I felt very convicted that was kind of my purpose at that time, to just work with those kids. I didn't know what it would look like, but the reason I chose to do that at that time was when I told you guys about that move I made from Southwest Houston to a town northeast. When I went to that town northeast, that's where I met the guy who became my father figure in life and my greatest influence, just because I'm like a basketball fanatic through and through. And when I met this guy, he was my basketball coach. So he just led me down the right roads because of the influence he had over me, because of my passion for basketball. So 2007, when I'm working with this group of kids, I'm just thinking I want to be for them what my coach was for me. And I don't know how that's going to look, but that was my plan. And when I made that decision, in my mind, I thought that I was giving up the chance to ever be a broadcaster, because most broadcasters, you play to a certain level or to a certain age, or you have to achieve certain heights. And it's not that often that a guy that played 4 years at college, who had an up and down career, and then played one season abroad, comes back to town and gets a chance to be a broadcaster. That's just not the path. So I was okay with that because I felt like I was doing the right thing. And it was that following year in 2008, I was asked by Oregon State's athletic director to be a part of their coaching search. And it was throughout that process, for a new men's basketball coach, it was throughout that process that one of them struck up a conversation with me and asked me if I still wanted to be on TV the way that I did when I was at Oregon State, because everybody knew that's what I wanted to do. And I said yes, and I explained the same thing to them that I just explained to you guys, that, yeah, I want to be on TV, but how in the world am I going to be on TV when I'm 23, I don't even play anymore, and I don't have any plans to go play again. And it just so happened that at that time, Fox Sports Northwest, which is now known as Root Sports Northwest, they were looking to hire former players. And I was only a year out, and there was still a little bit of name recognition from my playing days, where to Fox Sports Northwest, it made sense to give me a chance. And I got an interview that summer of 2008 and was hired 2 weeks later. And that was my entrance into TV, to be a broadcaster. So to answer your question, the impact that I'm able to have a chance to make in people's lives, whether that's through coaching or some type of mentorship or supporting people who do that. It doesn't have to be me. If I can support that in a way, that will always mean more to me than just being a broadcaster. But the thing I love about being a broadcaster, in addition to just the basketball element of it, is it gives me a platform, it gives me resources, it gives me a group of people now, even within the Trailblazer organization, who are really good people that are just trying to help other people. And now we get to do that together from our platform of being the Trailblazers. So I love it. Like when people ask me, is it like a dream job for you? I say, it's not a dream job if you're asking me if being a broadcaster in the NBA is a dream job, because I never set out to do that. That was never what I was convicted to do. But it is a dream job from the standpoint of the people that I work with have similar passions when it relates to using what we have for good. And then you combine that with the basketball element. Now it's a dream job situation for me.
Talk to us about that transition from being a player, being a coach, and then having to slide into the broadcast seat, and you look at the game in such a different way. Was that something you were prepared for, or did it kind of catch you off guard, just having to analyze it so differently?
It didn't catch me off guard, because being a point guard, which was a position I've always played, you kind of have to be able to analyze the game if you want to be relatively successful. You have to be the player who's an extension of the coach on the floor. Sometimes and many times, you carry more weight than a coach actually does, because you're the one training with your teammates, you're practicing with them, you know them better than your coach does, because you're with them off the court more than coach is, so you just understand them more. And there's a level of understanding and empathy you can provide in every situation. So I had always been in a role where I had to know how to answer the why and look beyond the surface on things. So then once I transitioned into broadcast and being an analyst, that's really my job, is to explain why certain things happened or how they happened. And for some things, it's almost self-explanatory. I mean, you just watch games and you can tell what happened, even if there was no analyst in the chair. So what I try to do as much as I can is maybe explain some things that aren't so surface, and some things that I have gained through perspective of playing the game at certain levels that helps me relate a little bit more to what's going on. So yeah, it wasn't really much of a change from that standpoint. The big change for me, guys, is when I started off in the college game and then started working in the NBA game in 2016, because the games are just played differently. You know, like one really minor example of that. In college, you will rarely see a team go 2 for 1 when it's about to be halftime and there's 35 seconds or so on the clock and you can go 2 for 1. That doesn't happen in college. In the NBA, like it doesn't not happen. Like that's the way that it goes, and you don't go against that. So there's certain things like that where the game's just played differently. The shot clock's different. You know, like in college, you have all day to talk, just all day. And in the NBA, it's a whole different deal, both because the entertainment value is better, the players are better, things are happening better. And in order to be able to complement that, you got to be able to move at that speed. So that was the biggest adjustment for me, as well as having a new set of producers, director, having a sideline person. Like, those are different elements that we had in the college game, but it was different. It was different people. The relationship was different. The working relationship was different. So in the NBA, you kind of get a groove and figure out what people do, and then you can move forward.
Do you think your playing career, being that you're broadcasting in Portland and their superstar is a point guard, do you think the fact that you've played at a high level at the same position has helped you to build a relationship with Dame? Or is that, because I've noticed that, a few images, few interviews together, it seems like you guys have a decent relationship. Do you think your playing career has helped to endear you or him to you?
I think so, for sure. One of the first conversations we had, he knew that let me back up a little bit. First, Damian is, I call him the best leader in sports, and I truly mean that. And when I say that, I don't know how other guys lead fully. Like, I'm not in other locker rooms and see things. So I understand there may be somebody else who is as good of a leader. I just don't believe, like, sincerely, I do not believe that there is a better leader in sports when you consider who he is every day, every situation, no matter who it's with. So this example kind of speaks to what I'm talking about. When I first got hired, Dame is the kind of person that knows, like everybody knows, that I'm new to the organization, but he's the kind of person that says, I realize that guy's new to the organization. I want to make him feel at home, and I want to make him feel like he's a part of the organization. So one of our first conversations we had was, he was asking me, like, who was at Oregon State when I was there? And I didn't even know he knew that I went to Oregon State. And so I get it. It's not hard to figure out, but he knew that and asked that question. And so we started talking about that. And that was kind of our first basketball conversation, because we started talking about some guys. Some guys are from his hometown in Oakland that went to Cal. And so we just kind of talked about it a little bit. But I do know that he recognizes that I did play. And what you'll find is guys at the highest levels of basketball have a real respect for Division I athletes, male and female, WNBA players. And when I go back to Division I athletes on the male side, even if you were a guy that just rolled the bench, which wasn't my role, but there's people like that. And the reason that those people have a lot of respect, and you don't see NBA players responding to posts that women make saying stuff like, stay in the kitchen, or this isn't a real sport. The reason you don't see that from those kind of players is because those players know what it takes to play the game at a certain level. And so I do feel like there is a respect level there from Damian, who is best point guard in the world, one of the top three, however you want to slice it. He's right there in that conversation. And so somebody like him could look at somebody like me that retired at 23 after an up and down career and still have a level of respect for my own career. So I do think that is there. And I think Damian, I know Damian really values truth and realness, and not like when you're trying to make an attempt to embody those things. He likes when it's there. And I mean, I am who I am, and I don't try to be somebody else or try to fit in and try to be something I'm not. And I think that's something that he does recognize. And so we've been able to have some really in-depth conversations about what we both feel like leadership is and the role and responsibility that goes along with that. And I think he knows the way that I treat people as well. And he knows, I guess I'm a guy after his own heart in a certain way, as are a lot of people. And he realizes who those people are. And those are the people that he wants to be known as someone he respects. So I do think that the playing relationship and just the everyday understanding of who we are does help our relationship.
Very good. Well, one more thing about him before we go away. Mitchell's favorite basketball moment probably of all time. You made the call last year against the Thunder. What was it like? How did you maintain some level of composure to be able to explain what was still going on and also capture that moment emotionally? It was huge.
Yeah, well, the part of the composure came because I was speechless at 1 second. After he made the shot, like he made it, and I was just like, in my mind, I'm just thinking, who does something like that? You don't do, that's not You're not supposed to do that. And the whole time, so there's a few things that were going through my mind before the shot even went up. Number one, I didn't want to go back to Oklahoma City. I don't know if you guys have been to Oklahoma City, and I'm not here to bash their town. There's tons of great people within that town, but it's not one of the more lively NBA cities. And I don't say that like I don't go to these different cities and go out and look for stuff. It's just like the feeling of just being there. It's just dry. It just feels like, oh man. So I didn't want to take the trip back. So that's one of the first things I'm thinking. And then, as you guys will probably remember, Nurk showed up in the arena, which was like a mind trip because we didn't see that coming. And normally, like with things like that, we're tipped off to it. You know, like we have an idea like this might happen or, you know, but like even with that, we didn't know that. So it was a true shock for all of us, as it was for the players. You heard the players, they didn't know Nurk was going to show up. So there was that. And before I get to the shot, we just talked about Damian and my relationship with him. Damian and I had just had like probably half an hour to an hour worth of conversation in the weeks leading up to that series about what we felt about leadership and how we felt players should conduct themselves. And it spiraled off to all these different conversations that we had that were playing out in that series. You guys will remember in game 3, the game OKC won. At the end of the game, Schroeder's tapping his wrist. Russ is rocking the baby. Paul George is dunking at the buzzer. All these things are happening. And then you saw the leadership of Dame and the Blazers and the way they handled that. And they stayed true to who they were. And like, it was crazy because those are all things that he and I had talked about literally like 2 or 3 weeks before the series started that are just playing out. And throughout the series, so you know, I didn't talk to him at all. So like a lot of times before a game, you know, he's on the sideline and we might say something here or there. But after game 1, I saw where his mind was at and I was like, I'm not talking to this dude at all. I didn't say one word to him the whole series. So when that shot, when it's like 10 seconds left and he's dribbling and after the comeback and, you know, everything happened and it's like, whoa, they got a chance to win this game right now. And I didn't know that they were going to have this chance. And when he was dribbling around half court, I've just never seen anything like that. I've never felt in a moment like that. Like, what are you doing? Like, go to the basket, go do something. And when he pulled up the shot, just the whole thing, just in slow motion, it's like he really did. He really just sat there, ran the clock down and shot this. Okay, let's see what's going to happen. And then when it went through, I know that my voice came through as soon as basically it went through the net, but I felt like in real time, I felt like I was like a second late because I felt like as it was going in, it was registering in my mind like, okay, so he did all that and then he made it. And now all these conversations are coming back to me of things we talked about that like he just went out there and did. So that was for sure like the greatest basketball moment I've been a part of, my favorite Blazer moment. It's going to be tough to top that because of all the context that went into it. And I'll tell you guys this, after that game, to kind of get back to your question, so like it's my job as an analyst to still do my job. So we made the shot. Kevin Calabro is a Hall of Famer in the play-by-play game. So Kevin and I know there's certain times where it's your time to do your thing or it's your time to do your thing. And at that moment, that's a play-by-play guy's job to do his thing. And as we're capturing the visuals of Damian walking around the arena, and like you don't need us to talk. So we laid out for a long portion of it and let you just enjoy it because it's right there. You don't need us to say anything. Then we started showing replays of the shot. And then that's when I jumped back in for the first time after being out for a while. And that night, man, I stayed at the arena longer than I've ever stayed at the arena after a game. And because of that, when I finally was leaving to go home, I was walking out of the loading dock area, which is where the players walk to then go to their cars. And as soon as I was coming out, Dame was right there. And he had just finished his TNT post-game stuff and all that. And this is the kind of person Damian is. He just made the biggest shot of his career, just sent a team home, and his family's back there, and there's a few other people. and he sees me and comes over to talk to me. He shouldn't have done that. Like he had every reason and right to be sitting there with his family. He's got his son in his arms. He's got every reason to just be sitting there with his family and talk. And he walked over where I was at to speak to me. And I don't say that like I'm some kind of special person. There's other people in our organization that he would have done the same thing for. I do believe that. And when he came over, I was just kind of shaking my head because he's acting all casual, like nothing happened. You would have no idea anything happened. And I said, you did everything we had just talked about. Like you realize that, right? You just did that. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I told you, I thought this would be a good test. You know, like leaders got to rise to the top and all that. And he's just saying it casually. I'm like, okay, stop that. Like be how I think you should be right now. You know what I'm saying? Like you realize what you just did? Like you just dominated a series. And he was still there, just holding his son. Like, yep, you know, it's going to be good. And, you know, we'll see, you know, what we got next and all this. And I was like, okay, just never mind. You know, like, cool, fine. We'll talk later. And then he goes back and look, check this out. So like I've never, in my 4 years now of working for the team, like I never asked the guys for pictures or autographs or anything like that. I try to make concerted effort to actually give them even more space. Because I know just even from my playing days, everybody always wants to talk to you. And, you know, the few moments that you can get to yourself, you really appreciate those moments. So I try to give them that all the time, unless there's something that we have to talk about. And so I was walking out of the arena after I talked to him, and I was just sitting there thinking like, no, this night is going to stick with me forever for reasons bigger than basketball. So I was like, I'm about to go ask Dame for a picture. And I've never done anything like that. So I go back in to the loading dock area, and I said, Dame, I was like, man, I don't even know how to ask you this the right way. And he's like, I was like, you know, I don't ask for these. I was like, can I just take a picture with you to commemorate this night? Because it means a lot to me. All the things that we have talked about and the way you've embodied yourself to remember this night. And he kind of like laughed at me and was like, yeah, come on, let's take the picture. And so we took the picture, and that's the only picture I've had with any of the guys where I asked them, can we take this picture? So that was my favorite basketball moment for all of those reasons and more. But it was awesome, man.
Well, going back to your broadcast, could you kind of talk to us how it is traveling to the different arenas, like announcing the game in every single NBA arena? Like, how is it getting used to that and still trying to show the fans back in Portland and Oregon, like what's happening?
Yeah, it's a challenge getting used to the arenas for me. 2016, that's my first year even going to all those arenas. Whereas for Kevin Calabro and even Brooke Olzendam, they have worked in the NBA before. So for different teams, but they've been to a lot of those places and kind of know their way around. Like everything was new to me. And then I'm the only one on our crew. I don't have any relationships in the NBA. So at that time, like I don't know the other analysts. I don't know the other play-by-play staff. I don't know the radio teams. I don't know the PR people. So I was limited just in who I can even talk to. And so now that's completely different. But for me, making that initial transition, it was a learning experience. It was learning, all right, where do I go? We get to San Antonio. Where's the media room? Where do I go get the notes from? Where do we eat? Which way is the best entrance into the arena? Where's the locker room? You know, so one thing we do, if we're going to be leaving that city immediately after that game, which is what we normally do, several of us in the traveling team, we like to bring a change of clothes. So I have a backpack that I bring, and I set it by the locker room before I go out on the court and do things. And then after the game, I get the backpack and then I change. Well, half the time we get to play, not even half, all the time we get to places and I don't know where the locker room or things are at. So that was a bit of a learning experience, just a feeling of comfort. You know, like in anything we do, just imagine going to a new job. You want to feel comfortable. The quicker you feel comfortable, that will in some way feed into your performance, because there's just little things like you're able to manage your time better. You're able to know what do I really need to do the job. So one thing I learned is like I would be a bookworm a lot of times the day before games, and I'm looking at all these notes and doing all this. And then I will find out as I got to know some of my colleagues throughout the NBA better, a 10-minute conversation with Dell Curry will tell me more about the Charlotte Hornets and what I need to know about them, because he's their analyst, than me spending an hour the day before looking at things that are going to be irrelevant to the game. But I maybe don't know that because I don't know. Like, for instance, I may be looking at some stats or something of a player that I think is going to play or whatever, and then Sean Elliott of the San Antonio Spurs can tell me when I get there, like, oh no, Popovich isn't playing that guy. Or when this guy gets in, here's all he does all the time. And those are those insightful comments are helpful because although we have the ability to watch all these teams play, just no other analyst knows the Blazers better than I know the Blazers. No analyst, you know what I'm saying, of all these teams, these guys know their teams and they know the personalities of guys and things like that. So that was a bit of a transition. And then, you know, once you're in the arena, I think for many of the fans, it's like just another basketball court. And, you know, like, you know, we're at a road venue. And if there's something unique about that venue, then maybe we can talk about it. Like sometimes we sit right on the sideline, like we do at Moda Center. There's other arenas like at Philadelphia, at Houston, who else? At Charlotte. There's other arenas where we're like halfway up the arena at our seating location, even at Golden State now at their new arena. And so sometimes we try to provide that information. So just so fans know, like some people are like, oh, okay, that's where you're doing the game from. But I think for the most part, it's like road game, play basketball, you know, like just kind of do your job.
What's it been like? You said earlier you're just a basketball fanatic. How have you stayed sane since, what was it, mid-March or something like that? What's keeping you busy?
Well, I am a basketball fanatic, but also, like I said, I'm a life fanatic to a certain degree, and you know, people's well-being and being able to help other people is paramount to me. So the what I do changed, but the why of why I do what I do hasn't changed. So the Blazers organization all throughout this time has been doing a lot of things to try to help the community. And also I had a show that started on NBC Sports Northwest called Herd Mentality that was about spotlighting, like, we got so many good people in this community that are doing great stuff every day. So even with the uproar we're seeing right now across the country, across the world, hopefully that can sustain momentum, you know, for positive change. But I would expect that at some point some of that momentum might die down just by virtue of the world reopening, sports coming back, jobs coming back, all those kind of things. It doesn't mean people don't care as much. Some people don't feel like they have the time to focus into that. So for me, like even starting that show and the things I've been plugged into have been geared to, all right, how can we help? Where can we plug in? So I've been doing that throughout this whole time. In addition to that, though, as it pertains to just sports directly, we still have some things that we do, like with the Blazers. Like even earlier today, I just recorded something for our weekly show, Trailblazers Courtside, with Jordan Kent and Michael Holton. And so we'll have conversations here or there. I did an interview with Nurk throughout this year. I did one with, not throughout this year, throughout this stoppage of play. I did one with Terry Porter throughout this stoppage of play. Have DJ possibly coming up soon. So there's things that we're able to do that still kind of connect us to the basketball aspect of what we do. But without watching games, man, it's just been kind of like, I'm guessing you guys, where there's classic games that come. So watching some of those, whether it's Trailblazer classic games or stuff on NBA TV, and then just keeping up with the current events of the world and just seeing what's happening. And then also last, being able to just spend time here at home. I'm married. My wife and I don't have any kids, so we've just been able to spend time that normally we probably wouldn't get. You know, like right before play stopped, the Blazers were about to play Memphis at home, and then there were like, I think 2 or 3 other home games, and then we were about to be on the road for like 10 or 11 days. So being able to be home during that time, I appreciate it. If you ask me, what is the one thing I don't like about my job? It's the travel. Like I like being home. I like being able to be in my bed every night. I like being able to see my wife. I like just being home. And I'm not saying that in a complaining way, because that's a very minor thing to have to endure, travel, if you don't like travel, when you consider all the great parts of the job. So yeah, I'm excited about sports coming back, man, especially with what should be this new format of play. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Like, I want to see who's going to be in shape. I want to see like, you know, like a team like Denver, they have a distinct home court advantage with their altitude. Like, we feel it as broadcasters.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have that in Orlando. The Blazers aren't going to have Moda Center fans to fall back on. I want to see in that type of setting, how do people perform? I think it's really, really cool. So really fascinating to see how that plays out.
How do you think the Blazers will fend in Orlando? What do you think?
I think very positively of it, and I'm not saying that because I'm a Blazer announcer. The reason I'm saying it is because of what we talked about earlier in this conversation, the way that the Blazers have guys that can take over a series. We saw it last year. We saw Damian and CJ. You know, CJ got talked about a lot in the Denver series. CJ was phenomenal in the OKC series. He showed up big. So the Blazers have guys that can win series, and I like the fact that there's a playoff before the playoff. So that 8 games is like a playoff. Like, that's how the team is going to approach it. And I feel like how strong mentally our guys are, they will be able to get themselves in a place mentally that maybe not every team can get into. And I think they will fare well in those 8 games because of that. And the fact that Zach is on schedule to be back, assuming that his on-court stuff before the game start goes as well, because that was the last step he had to clear. Nurk should be back. Not sure how that all, you know, how it fits, and does coach play him and Hassan together, or, you know, I don't know how that's going to work. But having him is better than not having him. So I feel like in those 8 games, the Blazers can do what they got to do to get within 3 games of Memphis, which is what we do to force the playoff. And this might sound crazy, y'all. I think they can actually get the 8 seed, not just the 9, because there should be 2 matchups against Memphis remaining, and they could win both of those matchups within those 8 games. So I don't put it past them. Like, this whole year, when the team was struggling to start off, like, we'll get on a plane after a game, and a lot of people would be sad and wonder what's going on, and I'm like smiling. And it's not because the team lost. It's because I believe Damian Lillard is the best leader in sports. I believe CJ is the best counterpart. I believe CJ, as much as anybody or better than everybody else, plays a role of, I'll defer to you as the main leader of the team, but I know I can get off if I need to. I know that if you miss 6 games, I can slide into the point guard position, average 30 points, and be knocking on the door of triple-double certain games like he did this year. So because of these elements, and I believe in Terry Stotts, and these elements lining up, the whole time I was like, I want to see how y'all going to dig out of this hole. Because to me, it's like, that's the challenge now. And I want to see how it's going to happen, because I believe in you guys to do it. So I want to see. So going into these 8 games, it's like, I believe y'all can get the 8 seed. So I want to see how this is going to happen. And even if you don't get the 8, get the 9. But you know what? New Orleans is a team that I worry about the most. Even Sacramento was playing well too, but New Orleans, man, the way they got a good thing going on right now.
Yeah, they do.
More than Zion.
Yeah.
Their whole thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, LA had to give up a lot, and it's showing off that they had to give up a lot to get AD over. But I think the Blazers have that experience advantage where as wild as this scenario is in Orlando, nobody knows what to expect. So at least you want some vets on your team, where Memphis and New Orleans may be lacking in that department. So I think you might be onto something. 8 seed, though, that might be tricky.
It is tricky, but it's doable.
Yeah.
Remember, there was a time, 2 months ago or so, like before Day went on that crazy tear, there was a time everybody was like, playoffs, man, this ain't gonna be the year to play. This ain't, you know. But it's like, now this guy's averaging 50 points. You know, like they can do things like that. So I agree with you. It is tricky, but it's doable.
Yeah. Well, once you went on that month-long I even on campus, because we have a lot of California like Warrior fans here on campus. So they're always like, oh, no way Blazers are going to make it. But once he went on that month-long tear, they started recognizing, like, if they get the 8 seed, they're probably the most dangerous.
Be careful.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Just matchup wise. Like, remember, that game against the Lakers for Kobe's memorial was different than other games against the Lakers. Now, some of that is because that day we were there, it was the Lakers' first game back after Kobe's death. And so there are emotions. But if you just watch the basketball after it, just simply having Reed there changed some things because he was guarding LeBron. And like the Lakers, their length is unfair. On AD and JaVale McGee and Dwight and all that. And the Blazers did not match up well with them this year. So now the Blazers are going to be facing them if the Blazers get the 8 seed and the Lakers are 1 with Trevor, with Zach back, with Nurk back. So now all that length advantage is different. It's a whole different map.
Mitchell, you have any more questions?
No, I pretty much hit it all on the spot.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time, Lamar. It was really great chatting with you. Enjoy Orlando, and we'll keep an eye on that 8 spot for you.
Okay, my pleasure. And just so you guys know, we don't know if we will be in Orlando. So that's something the NBA, they're really trying to limit how many people they let into that bubble. So it could be something where, we're broadcasting remote from Motor Center, and that might be what all the teams have to do. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.